Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, hours away from San Diego, but wanted to leave you with a new show. We've got R.J. Ryan with us talking about the Joyners. You might remember the Joyners being in 3D a few years ago. His and Dave Marquez's excellent book, Dystopian Future, that speaks as much about the present as it does the future. Very interesting, twisted soap opera. Well, R.J. is here to talk about it because Boom Studios is representing the Joyners now in full color and in two-dimension. So Marquez had to kind of play a bit with the visuals to adapt it to the two-dimensional form, the traditional form, and RJ talks about that, and we also talk about some TV work that he's got coming up, and just his thoughts on what's going on currently in the comic book adaptation business when it comes to film and television. Great conversation to start things off on today's Word Balloon. Word Balloon is brought to you by In-Stock Trades at InStockTrades.com. There are great deals happening now at In-Stock Trades, and you should take advantage of them on things like The United States of Murder Incorporated, trade paperback Volume 1, Truth, from Brian Bendis and Mike Oeming, 50% off. It's just $9.99. You can get the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. trade paperback, The Coulson Protocols. Great writers, great artists. Mark Guggenheim actually doing wonderful work on that book. 50% off, $8.99. Reach back for classic Doom Patrol from the 90s from Grant Morrison. Book 2, the trade paperback, is 50% off, $14.99. From Mark Miller, a great series from Image, Huck. Book 1, All American, 50% off. He and Raphael Albuquerque. 50% off at $7.49. Just a few of the great books that are available now at InStockTrades.com. Check out the deals for yourself at InStockTrades.com. Before we get started, you might have heard that R.J. Ryan, we call him Josh, and Dave Marquez did a book a few years ago with Daniel Quantz and Blake Leibel. It was a book called Syndrome. You might have heard recently that Blake Leibel was arrested for murder. And that's kind of chilling because, Syndrome was a book about a serial killer. Because the case is open and ongoing, RJ can't talk about the details on the record. I'm sure people might have read articles and expected maybe that that might come up in a conversation currently with Josh, but, he can't talk about it. So, we understand, we respect that, and there's a lot of positive things to talk about instead, and it's a very fun conversation. Let's talk now with R.J. Ryan on Word Balloon. It's R.J. Ryan, although we call him Josh because we're friends. So, Josh, welcome back to Word Balloon. It's nice to have you back after so long.
John, it's great to be here. The last time I was on was in early 2014, so it was long overdue for me. I love talking to you.
Thanks, man. Likewise. And congrats on you and Dave bringing back the Joyners in a different format. It was certainly one of the highlights of the format originally was that it's a 3D book, and now it's being told in a more standard two-dimensional way. Was this always the plan?
Not at all. The Joyners originated as a pitch strictly as a 3D book, and I will say that it was pitched as a $25 book, and after the book, it got bumped up to a $30 price point. But it was always pitched as a standalone, all 3D graphic novel, and that mutated into a process where Dave and Dave's wife Tara and I were very involved in actually making the 3D work. We didn't send it off to anybody. So we leave that in early 2014 when the Joyners came out, and something that was always on the table between me and Dave is that we had the second product, which would be releasing the graphic novel in a digital format in 2D, and our plan was always release it all at once and have it in black and white. Mm-hmm. And that was something we put in front of Phil Sablik at Boom Studios, who's the president of publishing, and Stephen Christie, who is the original editor on the book, the 2014 book, and was the editor-in-chief of Archaea, which is where the book came from originally. We were Archaea-based creators. And that was something we prepared and got ready, and it never got greenlit. And I think the reason it never got greenlit, from what I hear from Stephen, is that he always felt this book could really spread its wings if it was available in a more economically affordable, a more contained price point. I mean, so what we're doing this summer is releasing 4 issues that comprise the entirety of this $30 3D graphic novel. We're releasing them in color for $4 a pop. So there's considerable savings if you want this story, if you want to experience Dave's art. And Dave and I supported that decision, but it wasn't the original vision for how we wanted to go out with the 2D and digital and secondary print cycle of this book. But we've welcomed the fact that Boom is spending money on this, and they brought with that effort, we brought in a really wonderful colorist in Kelly Fitzpatrick, and her collaboration with Dave is something that is delighting us and delighting everyone behind the scenes.
It's great to reread it again because it had been a while, and certainly I've read a few comic books in between. So I think it plays fine in 2 dimensions, and if anything, the story is still strong, the art is still strong, and I think it is a good experience. And as you say, it's going to be a more reasonably priced compared to the $30 graphic novel that you're reading in 3D. It was, honestly, we spent a lot of time in both the phone conversation and also the panel we did at C2E2 talking about the 3D process that you guys kind of figured out on your own, and the way you did it. It was ridiculously ambitious, and I think you succeeded, but it is nice to see that the story and art are able to stand on its own in the 2D format as well.
I think, personally, I'm someone who was buying comics and enjoying them long before I ever did one myself. And the 3D price point for the 3D edition of this book, $30 is a lot to spend on one comic book. I have trouble spending that on a comic book, and everyone should. So I like that there's a sample size that, starting now, is available pretty much to anyone who walks into a comic book store, no matter what your budget is. It's wonderful.
No question. Yeah, man. And also, I think it's interesting timing that you're putting this out because I just spoke to Tom King, and I've been talking to him about his Vision miniseries, or maxi-series, I guess.
Wonderful. This is a breakout book in 2016. I'm very impressed with Tom King as a writer. He's awesome.
I agree with you. But I also think this is kind of the flip side of that story because, again, we've got a very dysfunctional family that there's a lot of secrets and a lot of tension that comes through and right away in the first chapter for new readers to it, that I would say that if you like the Vision and you like that kind of combination of family dysfunction with a sci-fi background, you will find a lot to like in the Joyners in that same way.
I never made the connection between those 2 books, and I've been following the Vision success this year really closely, and I never put that together. But thank you. I'm flattered, and I'm sure Dave is flattered too that you compare us to that. My entry point for this book as a consumer, when I put myself in the consumer shoes, is I have to be like, and I think Boom Studios and Archaea are this way too. Oh, Dave is doing Civil War, and then he's got this creator-owned book coming out almost concurrently with Civil War. What's up with that? What's the story there? And I hope that the curious people who discovered Dave Marquez through Marvel kind of find their way, some of them find their way to our book.
Agreed. And also, a lot like a Stuart Immonen creator-owned project compared to his mainstream stuff, the art style is different. It needs, and again, it certainly fits the story. But I also appreciate that, and it just shows you how talented Dave is as well, that these are 2 very different art styles, but both do an exceptional job of storytelling, and I think fit each project. This is kind of more of for people who need a reference, almost like Dean Motter, who is Mr. X for old-time comic book fans. I think they'll find a kinship to Motter's art and the way Dave is doing the Joyners book. And also another hook for people that might find this interesting, as you guys described it, and it didn't even occur to me when we originally talked about the book, but this is like kind of the dystopian Jetsons.
Yeah.
Which is great. And it didn't even occur to me, but, it's certainly knowing that going into reading it in the 2 dimensions, it's certainly obvious. And with all the Hanna-Barbera rebooting that DC is doing right now, people might find that interesting and another reason to be curious and maybe pick up this first issue.
I think the reason that DC hasn't attempted a revamp of the Jetsons is because this book exists. I mean, we use the Jetsons as a clear reference point. You don't need to be a fan of the Jetsons to get it. You just need to understand that the Jetsons was a animated future family sitcom with some surface visual trappings that we take a completely different point of view on. But yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah, no, I like it. And also, here's another thing that's like suddenly come into the pop culture world that maybe, obviously didn't exist when you guys put out the book, but also Silicon Valley. I mean, and I think from the business side, give people the 10-cent pitch on what the Joyners is. I've kind of given some comparisons and stuff, but you let people know as much as you want in terms of introducing them to this story.
Sure. The Joyners is a look at a futuristic and prosperous on the surface family set about 5 decades from now. And I mean, the big idea with the book was always that the reader was going to have a seat at the breakfast table as this family falls apart. And they fall apart in a hopefully visually interesting way. I mean, that's why I've got a partner in Dave Marquez who can actually pull off some interesting stuff on the page. But you're not meant to like these people. I guess I need to say that off the top. You're not meant to like these people. You're meant to spend time with them and see them for who they are. And see them for the mistakes they make and see them for how the choices they make have a way bigger impact than you might expect initially. And what I do want to say about the book, since we've divided up a graphic novel into 4 sections, you're going to see a progression across the series over the next 3 months, 4 months, where the individual issues just get better and better because they are building to a novelistic conclusion. Mm-hmm. And I'm very proud of that. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the special collaboration between Dave and Kelly Fitzpatrick, who's one of his friends and in his peer group in Portland. And he brought her up for the job. It was his choice entirely as to who would color this style of work by him. And their collaboration really kicks into gear in the 3rd issue. I think that's, from the cover to every single page, I'm blown away by how that looks, and I can't believe I'm involved in a comic book that looks that good. I don't think the extent of the symphony that they're performing is fully evident in the 1st issue. I do want readers to hang in there to get their money's worth.
I understand. I would say that another good comparison is Ordinary People, the movie from the early '80s. Robert Redford with Donald Sutherland, Mary Tyler Moore, Timothy Hutton. Man, it's an old movie now that I think about it.
The movie reference that Dave and I threw around when we were making the original book was The Ice Storm by Ang.
Sure.
That was the one that we talked about a lot and connected with the most. But American Beauty, Ordinary
American
People.
Beauty too, yes. When you said Ice Storm, I thought of American Beauty as well, of course.
Yeah, Magnolia. There's some stuff like that in there. Those were the movies we were watching to make sure we weren't repeating them exactly. But the story. I spent all day today looking at reviews of this book, and some people hate the story, and some people love it, and everyone loves the work by Dave. I mean, Dave is a crowd-pleasing talent, and it's not a surprise where he's taken his career in the 6 years that I've been working with him. It's not. I'm the least surprised of anyone that he is, driving shotgun on the biggest Marvel event in 5 or 6 years. It's no surprise to me at all. He's awesome. He's an amazing person. Absolutely,
and I think also. I get where some critics may not want to read this kind of story because it is kind of it's a hard story. And like you said, there are characters that, no, they're not very nice. You don't want to like them, nor should you. They're not nice people. But Dave's art, as simple as it is, these are all very cold people that are in some ways very emotionless. And I think Dave's art supports that. And I think a lot of his kind of blank facial artistic choices fit the characterization that you're writing as well.
Well, yeah, and I'm in the position where I know what Dave's doing after Civil War II, and it's pretty. It hasn't been announced yet. I think it's really cool. I think it's as different from the Joyners as Joyners was from Syndrome, as Miles Morales is from Iron Man. This guy makes very, very interesting choices, and I do take credit for some of his career. I've helped him in a lot of spots and advised him in a lot of interesting turns, but I think also Brian Bendis should take some credit for where Dave has gone, and certainly Dave's wife, Tara, has been very involved and been an incredible partner to him. So it does take a village to create a Dave Marquez, is what I want to tell people. He didn't just roll out of bed and
be brilliant.
Kill it.
Yeah.
He's been supported by some cool people, and he's also taken this very seriously, taken his job very seriously. Now, what The Joyners is a book that Dave created in between the raindrops of drawing big Marvel projects like Iron Man and Miles Morales, The Ultimate Spider-Man. And also, a year ago, Dave did a whole range of publicity pieces for Marvel. A lot of this stuff is happening simultaneous to the Joyners being pulled together, and particularly with this 2D version, Dave was the showrunner. Dave was my boss in many ways on this version because it was so important for him to click with Kelly and for their collaboration to kick into gear, and it does. I don't think it's fully in gear in this first issue. I think it really comes together by the middle of this piece, and by the end, they're just killing it. It's amazing. But what you're seeing with these 4 issues is a project really led by Dave Marquez, which is exciting.
That's great, and also I love the marriage between Archaea and Boom. I think it really helps. Well, I do. I don't know, and you might know more behind the scenes than I do, but I think it's great because I think it's only helped Boom. And I think I think it's helped both. I think from a distribution standpoint, it must have helped Archaea in terms of getting in a few more stores. And I think that it so far, at least from a quality standpoint, I mean, I've liked a lot of Boom books. I've liked a lot of Archaea books. I just think that it's been at least from an outsider standpoint beneficial because we've gotten a lot of really quality products out there. And hopefully it's getting into more stores. I mean, I'm always fortunate, Josh. I'm in a good city that supports a lot of independent books and all the publishers. It's not hard for me to go into easily literally a dozen stores in Chicago, the city proper, and also the suburbs, and find stores that are carrying your guys' product. So, again, I can only say that, I at least live in an area where, this stuff is available. It's a crowded field out there, and I can appreciate that. And I think, obviously, both Boom and Archaea have probably had to be more selective in terms of what they're able to release because of the possible, return on their investment and stuff. I don't know, but the good news is, I talked to Ollie Masters about his Boom series, and I thought that was exceptional. And I think The Joyners is another exceptional series that, again, if I didn't like it, we wouldn't be talking. I mean, that's the thing. People always ask me, it's like, how come you don't do more critiques on your show? And how come we don't hear about the stuff you don't like? And it's like, the stuff I don't like, you won't hear on Word Balloon. I mean, it's not a rah-rah show. It's no, I find this book interesting, and I want to go beyond what I've read. That's why we do these interviews. And I think The Joyners is another book that's worthy of people's attention.
Yeah, The Joyners is a weird book because it was incubated and produced and conceived and put together under the Archaea umbrella. And then a few weeks before we went to press, or before we were to start the press process of printing this book in China, the acquisition happened, the Archaea office was shut down, everybody moved across town to Boom, and Stephen, who edited the book, Stephen Christie, his role dramatically changed, where he now works at 20th Century Fox at their deal there and is very involved in the movies. And this was kind of the last Stephen Christie book out of the Archaea content factory. And, I mean, here's the thing. I've been to conventions supported by Archaea, supported by Boom. What you see at Boom, and this is this is the science of comic books that eludes me. I don't quite understand how this works. What you see at the Boom booth is they're doing tremendous, incredible sales at the Boom booth on single issues. They are really good at selling those. And it makes sense to put the Joyners in single issues because who knows how to move them? They know how to get them on the shelves. And they're much, I mean, you know, I'm not saying that Phil Sablik has an easy job. I think that guy has an incredibly hard job that only a handful of people on the face of the earth know how to do what he's doing, which is turn over this monthly periodical publishing business based on independent fiction. I mean, that's what this is, an independent art, independently created art. It's, and Shannon Waters and what she's doing at Boombox, it's all very impressive and beyond my pay grade. But I see how single issues Joyners make sense under Boom Studios, and the $30 graphic novel made a lot of sense when Archaea was a freestanding company. Now, just about numbers and collectability here, we printed more of the hardcover than we're printing of the individual issues, but we're not going to print more of the hardcover. I mean, they've still got them. You can get them on Amazon if you're listening to this. It's about $23 on Amazon. You can probably find a used copy cheaper, but we're not making any more of those. This story is going to live on really on Comixology and however the singles are collected.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I understand. And I mean, again, you're right. And Boom is facing kind of a more challenging market than when it came out 10 years ago. In fact, it's worthy of exploring with both Ross Ritchie and Philip, for that matter.
I'd love to hear you talk to those guys. They're interesting guys.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've talked to both. And I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw Philip at a show. I usually see Ross every San Diego. And no, I admire both of them. I think they have excellent taste, and I think what I've always appreciated from day one with Ross and Boom is he's always looked for the unconventional, and I think that's terrific. And it was certainly at a time back in 2005 or 6 when Boom started, when, you know, God, there were more than enough superhero books out there. What else have you got for us in the comic book world? And I think, you know, he immediately hit other genres right away. He had top creators working with him. And then also was, you know, willing to work on, you know, just put out challenging stuff. And I was happy as hell when Two Guns was sold as a movie. I mean, it was an excellent Stephen Grant comic book, but it was great that it finally found its way on as a movie as well. And again, what I've always appreciated about Archaea too, and Stephen Christie's vision, was he just, again, excellent taste and unconventional stories, and also putting them out very high quality. So as you say, the 3D Joyners is still out there for people to get either via Amazon or get it secondhand or find it at some stores that might still have copies and stuff. That's great. I think that's wonderful. But I also am glad and hope that this version finds a new audience, and because it is worthy, and also it finds the right audience, because as you say, it's not a book for everybody, but it's a really strong character-driven book, and I think again, you're right. Dave's art is excellent, but you know, don't sell yourself short. you wrote a really good story too.
Well, they're printing it again, so I must have done something right.
Attaboy. There you go. Exactly. No, that's true though too, and it's that's another thing. Man, I mean, and certainly in some cases, we're seeing stuff from like 10 years ago or even longer that's finding itself in print again with a different publisher and stuff. But, you know, this obviously it's more recent and everything, and I think it's a strong story, and I think it's worthy, you know, of being out there and maybe in a format that is more accessible to a different audience.
Hooray for Ross Ritchie, Phil Sablik, and Stephen Christie. Thank you, guys. I like you guys. You know, I'm going to send you some cupcakes soon.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you were telling me off the air that you went back to Portland, or you went to Portland, I should say, and you hooked up with Dave directly, obviously, to work on I'm assuming, you know, reformatting this and going over. But yeah, tell me about your visit to Portland.
Let me tell you about my visit to Portland. I've made 2 visits to Portland now, and this entails a pilgrimage to the comic book capital of America.
It certainly is.
You know, I'm up there to spend time with my friend and collaborator, Dave Marquez, and his family. And, so most recently, 6 weeks ago, I took the train from Los Angeles, where I'm talking to you from. I took the train, Amtrak, to Portland, round trip, to go spend time with Dave, and we worked a little on the book, and I went to Dave's baby shower, which was at Brian Bendis' house, hosted by Brian and Elisa Bendis. And I got to spend some time also with Kelly Fitzpatrick, who is the new colorist on Bitch Planet going forward for Kelly Sue DeConnick and Val DeLandro. And I had actually met Kelly the previous time I went to Portland in 2014. But it was exciting she had produced a lot of work since the time that I met her the first time. And it was exciting to say hello to her and talk to her and bring her a nice gift and thank her for being involved in the project. But I also, I got to go to Bendis' house, and, this is a guy who I feel a great deal of affection for, not just because he's one of the living legend entertainers in the comics field. I mean, there's no question about it. And that goes to the TV shows and the Bendis tapes on Suntress, Word Balloon, and it goes to, hundreds of comics I've read by him. It's been nothing but a thrill to see him and Dave gel and become this awesome creative unit that sells a lot of copies and puts a roof over people's heads and that sort of thing. And, he put on a really wonderful, loving, beautiful party for my friends and for his friends, for Dave and Tara. And, also regaled us with some pretty eye-opening stories from the showbiz world that could never be told on Word Balloon. But were really hilarious and funny and had me grabbing my ribs in pain because they were so funny. And, I think it's really special and interesting what's going on up there in Portland between, there's so many cool creators up there. When you spend any amount of time up there, you're going to have a great comic book experience. I did have dinner with Chris Sabella, the rising star writer of things like Welcome Back and what's his Eisner-nominated project, I'm forgetting the name of his other book that's so great. And got to visit with Matt Fraction and hear some of his. We had a real fireside chat with Matt Fraction, just like your show, because he was sitting right next to Bendis' fireplace and telling me all of his plans for his future projects. And I mean, that guy is amazingly creative. It's incredible what he's up to on his own. Apart from what Kelly Sue is doing is incredible, but what he's got going is really ahead of its time. It's very exciting to experience that up close and for him to be so generous with his time while I was up there. I did also, of course, separate from the festivities, I did go and spend an afternoon in Dave Marquez's studio and watched him work on Civil War II. That's his life right now. He's having a baby soon, but he has intense deadlines associated with Civil War II, and I got to see him lay down some inks, and it's electrifying what he's up to. And here's the thing about Civil War II. There's a lot more to come. I think there's stuff that everyone's going to be talking about. I'm not even saying I know what exactly what this stuff is, but in the very near future, as the series reveals itself to the public, people are going to be talking about it and arguing about it with the same intensity that they did with the Mark Millar, Steve McNiven version from 10 years ago. I promise you that.
That's cool. That's excellent, man. No, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm really, honestly, I spend more time talking to Bendis than I do with Fraction, but I consider Matt a friend as well, and I am really happy with. It just seems like since he left Marvel, he's now free to do everything that he wanted to do and was doing before his association with Marvel, but has the time and freedom to pursue those even more. And I think he's going in directions and storytelling ways that I don't know how much he even realized when, he finally just found himself at the end of his Marvel contract and is like, something, I'm gonna do my own thing. And that's great. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I would never say this directly to him, but maybe he'll hear this, which is it reminds me a bit of when Prince left Warner Brothers and had the true freedom to do whatever he wanted. That's what the position Matt is in. He's got the goodwill from having a number of hits that are that have kind of defined the last 10 years. Hawkeye and his Iron Fist work with Brubaker and Casanova is a comic that I'm in love with. That's a really important comic.
Oh, absolutely. My God.
We've sort of seen him do his Purple Rain and Under the Cherry Moon and Diamonds and Pearls. And I'm excited for the next era. It's going to be really cool. As a fan, it's going to be really cool, I think.
Absolutely. And, everyone loves Sex Criminals, but I can't deny that my favorite of those immediate post-Marvel projects was Satellite Sam, that with him and Shaken. And Odyssey is certainly exciting as well. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, no, Matt is really, like you said, I think the Prince analogy is pretty apt, actually. Yeah. I think, the only thing that's holding him back is his own imagination. And he and Kelly Sue have really got it down to a science in terms of managing their creative careers as well.
I think so. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. I think it comes through. I've gone to, they've done a couple panels at conventions where they even talk about that. And that's kind of their pro tip is not so much helping you come up with your idea, but how to manage your time and kind of make you execute your ideas.
The idea is almost nothing. It's almost nothing because we have 100 ideas a day. Everyone does. It's the work that goes into it and how you manage it. And I don't manage my career the way they do. I have a completely different approach, and I'm sure history will reveal why I'm less successful than them because of it. I don't do it like them at all. But I'm very impressed with what they're doing. And obviously with Brian, that guy is 5 steps ahead of everyone.
Oh yeah.
And he's a leader in the business. And so I love that he and Dave have become brothers. That's a wonderful thing. It's just a wonderful thing to see. It makes me happy.
No, I agreed. And yeah, believe me, I haven't talked much with Dave since the collaboration began, but I have talked a lot with Brian, and you're 100% right. And I agree. And I know he really appreciates Dave's talent and ideas and is using them to the fullest, and Marvel is using them to the fullest. And as you said, with Fraction success, I mean, that seems to be the right formula for some. It's not for everybody, but in terms of, having a few big hits with the big two and stuff like that certainly makes it easier to take that audience and lead them to your creator-owned work. And certainly, I mean, I hope this happens for the both of you in terms of what's going on with the Joyners and stuff and whatever future plans. Let's talk about what you've got coming up. In the future.
You touch on something that's kind of a sensitive point for me, which is like, do I have to now go do a superhero comic? Because I've had that opportunity dangled in front of me and several times. I mean, Archaea, pretty much anyone who came out of Archaea or had a success at Boom has the opportunity to pitch a series at Marvel or DC. If you want it, it's totally there for you because those companies are known as talent farms for mainstream comics. People, it's easy to go. It's easy to make the leap from a successful Boom or Archaea book to a new Marvel property, and I haven't done it yet. And I don't necessarily have a great reason why. I mean, I think my reason for not doing it yet has to do with the things I need to be in place in that opportunity. And so if I were to go work at DC or Marvel, and these are opportunities that come around every year because these guys always have new publishing initiatives and they're always bringing in new people. The thing I've always looked for and hasn't quite been put in front of me is a project with a clear end date. I mean, the thing is, if you have any kind of success as a periodical comic at Marvel or DC, they want to keep it going,
Right.
And that interferes with plans for my own work, So I'm kind of, I've said no for a while, and I've never pitched on any of these books. I've never gone to the point where I threw in a pitch and they said no. I've just heard possibilities put in front of me. And I have to say that maybe the readership is evolving where you don't need to really do that anymore. I mean, what do you think?
Well, this is the conversation I've been having for the last few months, and literally the episode that came before yours with Tom King, I readdressed it as well. I think there's I keep saying this, and I'm sure my listeners are sick of it. I think there's a new normal as far as the entire comic market, and I do think that there is a very large new segment of the audience that has no need to read Superman or Spider-Man or the X-Men or the Justice League or Batman, whatever, because two reasons. One, they might feel like what they're getting on television and films is enough to satisfy that itch, but also that, no, they want stuff like Archaea makes. They want stuff that Vertigo makes, or more importantly, what Image is currently doing now, where they're interested in non-superhero concepts that are comics and stuff, but, don't have nothing to do with superheroes. And I think that both DC and Marvel, I don't know if because they seem to operate as a business as usual standpoint, although DC will admit that they made mistakes in the last 5 years. That's the whole point of Rebirth. And I think what they're doing with Rebirth is in a better direction than what they've had in the last 5 years. But if they think it's going to go back to the old numbers that there used to be, I think they're kidding themselves. And I mean, even Tom King, who had 350,000 copies for Batman #1 that just came out this week as we're recording, he's like, yeah, we're doing fine now. Let's see what happens in 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
And I agree. And I totally agree. And I think, yeah, it's like, if you guys think you're going back to the way things were back in when the first Civil War was out, even 10 years ago, I think you're nuts. And I think it's a different comic market now. And they better get used to this new normal and accept the levels of where the books are. And it might mean that they're going to have to decide to, I don't know, maybe cancel a bunch of books, and that way they can continue to operate, but with less books coming out, and they can still afford to, pay the writers and artists that are able to perform at a certain level. But I just don't think it's going to go back to the old days, because I think the price point is something that people contend with. I mean, this is a complicated question, but yeah, I mean, I think all these things are factors. And again, I think there are quality books that are coming out from the other publishers that aren't superhero things. And especially in the case of Image, where a creative team can kind of call their own amount of money for each issue and are like, something, $3 or $3.50 is enough. And they make a decent living at doing that and stuff. It's like, watch out, DC and Marvel, because it's a competitive field out there. And I think a lot of your lower tiered books are going to lose against that kind of competition.
Well, yes, I agree with everything you just said. I will say, with respect to DC, I've got a lot of friends who work there, who make their living there. I want to say that, as far as I can tell, that's a company that pays people fairly, which is a really important thing in our business. I mean, I think it's one of the most important things. Your value as a person can be tied up to the value of your labor. And I think I like hearing stories about people making the best salaries of their lives working for Warner Brothers or DC or for Marvel. Marvel pays really well too. That said, with DC, if you look at the results on paper, if you just look at the balance sheet for the comic book publishing operation over the last 18 months, if you look at the charts, those numbers alone should justify people losing their jobs. Okay? That's just reality. There's been a major sales collapse there, and that's a leg of the table that the retail community really needs working at a higher sales quality or higher sales level than it has been. So something else must be going on here that Dan DiDio and Jim Lee and the other people who we keep hearing in the media should be getting fired but aren't fired. And it's obvious that DC is a multi-dimensional company. They're involved in a lot of other things besides the comic book publishing operation, including big-budget feature films, a really robust licensing program. I mean, a licensing program that I've had people on the inside describe to me as a labyrinth. I mean, the number of products with DC characters on them worldwide is astounding. It's a shocking number. It's in the thousands and thousands. And then there's also a bookstore and collection business. So it isn't all just the monthly comics. And I think there's a lot of parts of DC that are working great. We can bash Batman versus Superman all day. That movie made like $900 million worldwide. It sold a ton of tickets. No matter how you think it was executed, it sold a ton of tickets. There's bigger fish in that pond than the print comics business. But I want to see that print comics business healthier. I think Rebirth is a really cool way to address that. I like what they're doing, which is let's firm up the pillars of DC and in some cases double and triple ship certain titles and flood the zone with the stuff that we know people want from us. And that can potentially build a great foundation. It sounds like the numbers are awesome. I think what they're doing is really cool. I don't see my place in that world right now, and I don't really see my place where Marvel's going either. So I'm sort of pushing in my own direction for the next year in the sense that my next book is very long. I've been working on it for 3 years. It is in the 500-page neighborhood, which is, I mean, it's one of those things. That was the process I had to start in early 2013 to get to the point where I'm ready to release this book next year. But I'm playing in a dangerous territory for comics people because I've invested a few years on this, and it's one big project. It's not a bunch of IP. It's not a whole universe of different titles or anything. It's straight up one story that I'm taking quite a bit of real estate to tell with the artist I'm working with. And it's a risk. It's a calculated risk, and I'm excited to see what happens with this. I'm going to announce this book probably in the next 6 months. And the other hook with it is I'm bringing to readers an artist who they've never seen before. He's never been published before. And you will see a guy develop across 500 pages into a world-class talent. I'm really excited about that. That's, to me, comics are comics art. I think I like to think I'm in a secondary position to the artist, and I'm trying to make that clear in my work, but it's not really about me. I'm the guy who's maybe doing the blueprint, but they're actually building the house. So.
Well, yeah, but again, to continue the architectural analogy, the foundation though is still a strong story. I mean,
maybe
when Rucka and J.H. Williams introduced Batwoman, J.H. Williams' art was incredible, but at the foundation, Greg still had to deliver a really interesting story, and he did, because we went through that period in the 90s when art was 90% of the show, and it was 10% story, and it sucked. I mean, don't get me wrong. You name any image artist, and I appreciate them from an aesthetic art, point of view, but a lot of those stories suck. And I mean, maybe again, that's the old man in me talking. But so there's got to be that balance, and obviously you recognize that as well. What I wonder is the challenge of coming up with something new. And again, this is something I've talked about recently with a lot of the other creators. It's that first issue of giving enough story in that first issue to say, here you go, here's a full meal. If you want to continue the journey with us, we've laid out what our, basics are, and what you have to watch out for. And again, this is my armchair quarterback point of view, is if you don't give enough in that first issue, and it's still just kind of a first chapter without enough payoff, then I really think you are asking a lot, and a lot of readers might abandon and go, yeah, this is kind of interesting, but I didn't get enough from my first issue. See you later.
And see, I hate that everything sort of hinges on the first issue. It's not. I don't think that's the best look for the kind of stories I want to tell right now. I want to give you the whole thing at one time.
You want to give? Oh, so are you going to put out a graphic novel that's like 500 pages long?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's okay. I mean, that's fine. That's like a novel. But I guess I guess I was looking more at Jesus Christ, 500 pages. Holy shit! What are you, Cerebus?
Yeah. It's also it was one of those things where the first several years I was working on comics, it was something I would always tell people never to do. And I think I was performing reverse psychology on myself and tempting myself to try this. And I'm going to do it once and see what happens. And I'm pretty deep into it. I'm far enough along in it that people who I respect have gotten a chance to look at this work and they like it, And it's led to other opportunities. So as I've told you, for the last several months, I've been working in a producerial but not writer capacity on a television reboot of a really well-known classic superhero property. And it's interesting to be on that side of the table too, and I hope that this gets announced this summer, and I hope it all goes great, and I'm excited about the work we've done. But I think my limited work in television reminds me of how much I love to work in comics and how exciting the comics medium is to me and how different it is from television. I mean, we're seeing a lot of different variations on the indie comics creator who goes off to make a television series. We're seeing, Bendis spent 15 years getting powers on television, but it's on television now in a really interesting, unique, cool way, and I'm really impressed with what he and Oeming have done. They've turned this into a living, breathing thing that I don't see any reason why the Powers TV show can't go for 5 more years. They have a captive audience with the PlayStation universe, and it seems to be very compatible to people who are plugged into that ecosystem. And I've experienced it on Crackle, which is a great secondary market for that show. But then we've also had things like Cullen Bunn had the Six Gun at NBC, and they shot a pilot, and no one has seen that pilot. We don't know if it's good. We don't know if it's bad. NBC certainly is capable of making idiotic, wrong choices. I've seen them do it over the last few years. And I'd love to see a Six Gun TV series. And, and then you've got Preacher, which was, going to be a movie for years and years, and now it's a TV show. And I'm kind of surprised that the TV show hasn't gotten higher ratings for how good it is. And then you've got The Walking Dead, where I think 90% of the audience doesn't give a fuck about the comic books at all. They are engaged in a story that's being told by actors and television writers. So, and more power to Robert Kirkman that he can straddle both worlds. But I think, I feel in the world of these high-profile television development circles, I am a foreigner, and I'm bringing a comic book perspective to them. I'm not an expert on how to make a television show.
Well, and like you said, some of the best stuff that they start with amazing comic books to tell these TV stories and stuff. No, sometimes they fail. Constantine was I really think ABC's relationship with Marvel and Disney is very unique, and I mean I'm glad that S.H.I.E.L.D. is chugging along, but Agent Carter was a great show, and it just didn't find its audience. And the CW is succeeding, but also the CW, its rating success is proportionate to its affiliate strength, and they don't have the affiliate strength that certainly the big three, and I would likely say Fox. I haven't seen the count of where Fox's local affiliates are as opposed to ABC, NBC, and CBS. Well, and even look at Supergirl. I mean, my God, Supergirl moves to the CW because what would be an obvious rating smash for CW numbers is just okay for CBS. And given the amount of money it costs to make Supergirl, it wasn't enough. So I do think as much success as we're seeing with the other platforms, the streaming platforms, and cable and basic cable and stuff, where it's a smaller audience, although with the exception of Walking Dead, which is doing, big 3 network numbers on AMC and stuff. I mean, that's an exception. God, Mad Men, what a great series, not a comic book thing. But, and very solid numbers. And every year it was like, well, do we keep doing this or not? And Matthew Weiner going, hey, fuck you, let me know. Give me a goddamn green light so I can finish my story, or tell me no so I can finish it as quickly as possible. But don't leave me in limbo like this. I mean, it's interesting. Go ahead.
I did spend some time with Matt Weiner about 3 weeks ago at a family function, we have some family connections. I actually thank him in the acknowledgement to the Joyners in 3D because in 2004, I went, when that guy was writing his second season on Sopranos, I went over to his house and he spent the afternoon with me figuring out a writing career for me and
that's really nice. Wow.
Showing me the ropes. And I just ran into him again at a small family pool party about in early May, and we were talking about everything and kind of updating each other, and we were talking about the end of Mad Men, which I loved. I loved how he ended that show. You loved that, too. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That was a slam dunk. That's what we call a slam dunk in the parlance. And when he was, we were talking about what's next, and he's like, well, you have to remember about Mad Men and me. He said this to me, and I'm quoting him egregiously on this show. But what he said to me was, what you have to remember is that ending for Mad Men, he's like, I wrote that 2.5 years ago now. I'm dying to get back to work. And now,
wow.
do I know exactly what he's working on? No, I don't. And that's his private business. But I can see that this guy has such a fire inside of him. And it's similar to what Bendis has. I mean, it's just like, it's unstoppable. Whatever is next, it will be bigger than Mad Men. I guarantee you.
That's excellent. No, and I'm thrilled with what Brian's doing now. They announced Scarlet is in development at Cinemax.
Love that comic.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing. It's like you said with Kirkman, Brian's kind of reaching that point now too, where hopefully it's like, okay, Brian, what else do you want to do? What other ideas do you have? And I know he's got a great relationship with Sony in that way. So that's huge. By the way, and this is my first opportunity to say this, I've watched the first 2 episodes so far of Powers. And as good as the first season was, it is so much better the second season because of the changes that Brian even talked about here on Word Balloon, art direction, different showrunner, and I just really think the proof is there. And, it's very rare that a series does get everything right in its first season. I really think that the show has taken a huge leap forward in the second season. And I agree with you. I think... No, very easily. You could see 5 seasons, if not more, for Powers, as much as Sony is willing to spend. And I think that the concept is strong, and the actors are executing. Man, I mean, my God, I think it's I think it's really doing great.
Well, let's talk about that for a second because I think one of the cool things about season 1 was that it looked like a Bendis and Omen comic, and now you got season 2, which I've just seen episode 1, but season 2 looks Bendis and Omen-y. You know what I mean? Which is kind of interesting. That's a cool way to go. And you can see like Preacher could go in that direction too, where the skeleton of the comic book visuals gets put into place like a jigsaw puzzle almost, and it becomes more and more intrinsically part of the show. So, having Michael Madsen play Super Shock, I think, is a stroke of genius. And,
Yes.
And there's a lot of little elements on that show that I really dig. Like just in the trailer, what you see with Will Wheaton and what he's going to be doing is going to be pretty interesting, I think. And I've talked to Mike Oeming about this. I really am a huge fan of that guy. And I love how he and Dave Marquez have also formed a really tight friendship too. Mike Oeming is a wonderful, saintly person as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that guy is just such a huge talent and also just has that winning personality where you meet that guy and you're like instantly rooting for him to kick ass. It's a weird thing.
I agree. I've dropped a few hints here and there, but Mike and I separately are working on a project for the History Channel. And,
cool.
And it was really funny how we both found out that each other were involved. And we emailed, it's like, hey man, you're on this? And it's like, yeah, that's awesome that you are too. And Mike is hilarious, and I love him as a guy, and I really respect the hell out of him as a storytelling artist. I think he's a great talent, and I'm really glad that his career has worked out as well as it has because he's had his ups and downs. As great as he was, I mean, God, I really loved his stuff. Hammer of the Gods, wasn't it? Hammer of the Gods?
Yeah. That's him.
Yeah, I mean,
that's his take on Thor. It's pretty cool.
Yes, and that was my first introduction to him even before Powers. So it was really like, oh, the guy who's writing Ultimate Spider-Man is working with the Hammer of the Gods guy. Okay, great.
I'll tell you what is really neat is he had out earlier this year the Omnibus. Do you know what this is?
Yes.
So that book is the publication designer for that book is Tara Marquez, also known as Tara Rhimes, Dave's wife. So she collaborated with Mike for like a year putting that book together, and it's really neat. It's a really offbeat. I strongly recommend that book because that book to me is so oming. It's just so it's like a case of, it's like the essence of oming. You know what I mean? It's a lot of his work. It's a lot of his different work. So Powers #1 is in there. There's also some very intriguing short stories that he's written, and I think that you get Mice Templar in there a little bit too. And
sure.
Just his
Parliament of Justice is Parliament of Justice in there?
Yep. There's some awesome stuff in there. Great book. That's a book I would strongly recommend everyone seek out. It's like similar to Word Balloon by John Suntress. It is sort of the graduate level course in comics and sort of how to make it in comics. Just like before I made my comics, I listened to the show to get a handle on what I was in for, in the mainstream or sort of in the alt mainstream, which is where I've made a home. And there's a lot of information in that book too.
Oh, thanks, man. I'll take the comparison. That's really nice. No, I try to I want to know, as I said before, because I'm letting some critique of me influence what I'm about to say, because some people are like, oh, if you just want to hear a guy talk about books that he likes and that's it, go ahead and listen to Word Balloon. And it's like, man, you do not get what this show is, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's all they're looking for is, a bunch of guys critiquing books. No, that's not what this show is. I try to provide the forum for you guys to kind of talk about your adventures in comics and really, as you're making the stuff, the things you have to contend with to make your stories, the successes and the failures, and however much you're willing to be candid about, what's going on as you guys try to pursue your creative endeavors. I mean, that's the point of the show. So great, thank you, and I'll take, like I said, I'll take that because Mike, I think you're right. Mike is a really interesting creator. I think a lot of his ideas on their own are as interesting as his collaborations as well. And I'm glad that he and Brian collaborate as much as they do because I think they do great work together. But no, Mike is strong. And also, again, this second season of Powers, Brian was saying that he's like, I just don't feel like it's oming-ish enough. Because for me, everything was too sunlight. Everything was happening too much in the daytime. And it's like, where are the shadows? Where are the back alleys? Where's the darkness? We got there by the end of the first season. But I really think that this season is much more noirish and in the right way, and again, more reflective of Oming's style.
I think it's been tricky to, and I'm not speaking based on anything Oming or Bendis has said to me or said to Dave that's come back to me, but I think in general, from what I hear, Atlanta, everyone's shooting there because it's an excellent tax deal, and there are facilities there. I think that the community there has been stretched a bit by the limitations of finding enough great crew to work. I'm talking below the line. I'm talking about your camera operators, your lighting guys, that kind of stuff. Those all have to be local hires, and it was great when The Walking Dead was there 5 years ago and nothing was shooting there except Tyler Perry movies. And now, that's a production base for Marvel along with London. Marvel's making, I think they're making Spider-Man there and Infinity War, if that makes any sense. And you've also got a number of TV shows there now. And I think Powers, they've changed their crew since season 1. That we can say that. There's a different showrunner. I think there's a lot of Ben Elton, who's a genius writer.
Ben Edlund is fantastic.
Or Ben Edlund, is writing on that show too. I mean, I think and the writer's room is in Los Angeles, so that's not quite addressing the problem that I see there. But I think the longer you plant your flag in Atlanta, the better people are going to come to your project, from what I've heard. So I'm sure it just gets better and better, and I wish those guys a ton of success. I mean, as much as you can get. I think by the way, I think they're in a great protected zone with PlayStation where they don't have sponsors or networks breathing down their neck. They just have to deliver something that audience is willing to keep coming back and watching, and clearly that's what's going on, and that's an outsider's perspective looking in. I'm not an insider on that show.
You're right, and I mean, it spent 10 years at FX in development, and much like you said that there was a pilot of the Six Gun that we're never going to see, there's a Powers pilot that FX made that we'll never see, was shot here in Chicago. And it had Jason Patrick and, what's her name? Lucy Punch, thank you, exactly. And,
I think Chi McBride was in there, too. I think. Wasn't he?
I don't remember that name, but I know Charles Dutton was in it. And
Charles Dutton, sorry, so I was confusing him with.
And then also, Bullet Tooth Tony, the soccer player that has become a character actor in all these movies. Okay. He's in all the Guy Ritchie movies.
Hey, by the way, I haven't seen that pilot. I heard it was cool. I heard it was a totally dope pilot. It was just more like, FX, it's a big deal to get FX to pull the trigger on a series. There's a lot they developed that doesn't fit for them.
Did you see last year the Billy Crystal, Josh Gad?
The Comedians.
Comedy? I liked it. I liked it enough. I didn't think it was perfect.
Who liked it. Yeah.
Well, that's good, and I feel better about it because, and actually, Brian didn't like it, and I think Brian's a cool person too. But we talked about that, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't like it." And he goes, and he's the first one to tell me, he's like, "Didn't get picked up," and I'm like, "Oh, that's too bad." But again, no, I know. That's why FX has the success that it does. They really take their time, and they really wait until they get something right before they put something out.
Yeah, I think that FX is. They need to be, because Fox doesn't own and HBO, they are kind of Fox's HBO.
Absolutely.
So they have to, similar to these mid-sized comic book companies like Boom and IDW and Image, the hits have to be like so zeitgeisty and cutting edge and like perfectly executed. So there's just very little wiggle room for mistakes when you need to every quarter have an American Horror Story or OJ Crime Story or Game of Thrones. And we've seen what happens when that doesn't work. It's vinyl, where the show that you put up as the cutting edge show doesn't quite connect. And the numbers are low, and they're going to have to revamp that show now to get people to come back to it if they want it to keep going.
I agree with you. That's
and they already have. Terrence Winter, the showrunner, is not involved in that show anymore, which is crazy to me.
Wow.
But, yeah,
that's the guy, for people who don't know, amazing Sopranos writer, the guy who show ran Boardwalk Empire. So
he wrote Wolf of Wall Street too.
And I totally forgot about Wolf of Wall Street. There you go. No, that's really interesting. And I felt, dude, I don't know if you know this, my day job has changed. And since December, I've been working, it's the same group of radio stations, but now I work directly for the classic rock station of the 3 stations I work for. And I was really like, hey, man, we got to get behind vinyl because this is the core of the music we're playing. And I have to agree with you. I really went into it with the best intentions of I'm going to love this. And it was like, well, it's okay. And especially like even the first episode there were parts of it that I wasn't crazy about. I love Bobby, what's his name? Carnivale?
Cannavale.
Yeah, he's amazing. And great cast. A lot of good ideas, but it was definitely missing something. And yeah, it's interesting to know that Terrence Winter's not part of the mix. But yeah, you're right. It's going to. They kind of are like, well, we got to at least give it another season. But that's an interesting failure, or I wouldn't say failure because it's not done yet. We'll see what happens in the second season. But remember Luck on HBO, the horse racing show? Loved that show.
Well, that was a brilliant show. And a really risky show.
Well, clearly from a... Go ahead. Why was it risky in your mind?
Well, I think that was a show that was great, but I think it was, I'm 41, and I have a guess as to how old you are, but you don't need to say it on air. But I think it was aimed at people older than us, if that makes any sense. Like, I think Michael Mann is about 68 years old, and David Milch is close to 70, and I think they made a show that really appealed to their inner selves. And, HBO, the bread and butter of HBO is not in old white men, it's in young people.
You're right. You're also Silicon Valley.
The stuff that's really clicking at HBO is Silicon Valley, Girls, which
Yes.
Which, by the way, do not have the biggest numbers in HBO history, but they have the most buzz, and buzz is more important than numbers for HBO's subscription business.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
That's the analysis of a total idiot.
No, but you're not too much of an idiot when it comes to that, because you're 100% right, and that's why we don't get numbers from Netflix and Amazon Prime and all these streaming services. It's all about buzz. You're 100% right. And no, I'll give you another FX show that I loved that didn't make it. The boxing show, Lights Out. Great show.
Cool show. Do you watch Kingdom? Do you know the show Kingdom? Kingdom is on the Audience Network on DirecTV. It's the MMA shows.
I don't have Direct. I have Comcast or Xfinity. I don't have DirecTV.
Sure.
I wish I had.
Well, you can find the show in other ways if you need to. I think there's ways of finding the show. But have you heard of the show? It's Frank Grillo is the lead, who was Crossbones in Civil War.
No, tell me about Kingdom. What's it about?
It's created by Byron Belasco, who is a former writer of. He's been on some really killer shows, killer mainstream network shows as a writer, supervising producer. Like, I want to say stuff like Grey's Anatomy. I'm just forgetting what his signature show was, but it's his show. He's a young guy, pretty young writer, and it is about a father who runs an MMA-oriented gym in Venice Beach, and he's got some real troublemaker sons. One kid is a golden boy, potential MMA champ. The other one is a total nightmare, bad-behaving kid who also is a promising fighter. And if you like Lights Out, that's a show to seek out. And it's really beautifully written and smart cast. Frank Grillo is a pretty amazing performer as a lead. We haven't seen him a lot. He was in Purge 2. He's terrific in Captain America: The Winter Soldier as one of the villains in that.
Oh my God, yes.
Really good and really menacing, and he really goes toe to toe with the Marvel superheroes. And so that's a TV pick I strongly recommend. I think we're right in the middle of season 2 right now, or it's almost wrapping up.
All right, I'm going to look for Kingdom. That's good to know. Yeah, dude, I'm so bummed. What's that channel again?
That's the Audience Network, which is, I think it's channel 101 on DirecTV.
Right. Okay. Because I've heard. I mean, I know Joe Buck has a talk show on there as well, and I hear great things about Audience. And sadly, it's not on Xfinity, so I don't get it. And I've heard a lot of great things about a lot of their programming, so that doesn't surprise me. And it's
Well, that's AT&T money, so they're going to continue to put tens of millions a quarter into original programming there. It's worth it for them. I mean, this cable isn't dead yet. It's still a pretty big business. We've still got a ton of people who, because of sports, because of sports, they pay a monthly cable bill in the hundreds of dollars or $100.
You're right.
And that gets them access to all these 400 scripted television, pretty much most, except for the Netflix, Hulu, and PlayStation, all that stuff. But it gives you access to hundreds of scripted original shows every year. Now, with this preponderance of all these scripted shows, we are seeing a lot of comic book people are coming into television for the first time.
Yes.
Ed Brubaker's writing on Westworld, and a lot of these guys are doing interesting stuff. But I'm sort of coming out of that culture, and when I talk to my agent about this, he seems to sort of see things a similar way, which is I just come out of it it's so much cooler to have a hit book now than it is to have a television show. I'm sorry. I mean, it's harder. It's more of a singular achievement. There's less luck involved. And it's something you can really stand behind. And I'm still looking for that, to be honest. But I tend to be more impressed now with someone who can pull off something on the page and get it to readers. Like, I think what Fraction and Zardsky, Chip, Steve Murray, a.k.a. Steve Murray, what they have done with sex criminals is cooler than what anyone can do in television, period. And what Kelly Sue's done with Bitch Planet is like, whoa. People in television they're looking. I go into meetings and people talk about that comic in particular as being like, how the hell does someone even come up with that or figure that out or make it work? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm trying to figure that out myself.
No, I understand. But everyone you've mentioned, though, has also had that hit book. And now is just, so for them, the TV world is new. And that's
Absolutely.
why, I mean, so that's great. I mean, that's cool, and I agree, and I see the benefits of both sides. And I don't know when this bubble bursts. I really don't. We're the oversaturation point, because
I'm not an expert either. I have no idea either.
But I mean, in the meantime, we can appreciate the embarrassment of riches. And is Kingdom? Did they release it on DVD?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Well, then I can. Yeah, I can.
I think it's on
So I don't have to steal it. I can actually watch. I can actually buy it.
Well, I mean, it's also where we've got this binge watching situation. I don't think stealing is such a stress for these guys anymore, because the stealing will eventually lead to you pulling up on the on ramp of watching the show the second it comes out.
Sure.
And the stealing is sort of like streaming. It sort of gets you there, gets you caught up. And so we're not here. I'm in Hollywood. I'm going to TV meetings and going to these companies. And I'm not hearing a lot of people complain about piracy of television shows so much as I'm hearing, how do we monetize an audience of 500,000 super loyal viewers? And the answer I hear back is, we've got to keep making this content available on all the different platforms. So Powers may start on PlayStation, but season 1 migrates to Crackle or migrates to home video. It's this long tail we've been hearing about. Eventually, we're all going to sort of pick up on the shows we like. Which we most famously, that happened with Breaking Bad, which was a small, borderline success for its first 2 seasons. Then people experienced it offline, if you will, or off live.
Sure.
And suddenly it's an important show.
Interesting. No, honestly, man, I appreciate the perspective, because this is what I hope for when I do talk to Brian and Jeff Loeb and the players that are in there that are dealing with this stuff. Joe Henderson as well, another good show. Lucifer was very. I was.
You just had him on your show. He was just on your show.
Yeah.
Right?
No, Joe. I'm really happy for Joe.
3 weeks ago.
Oh, you heard it 3 weeks ago? That's fantastic.
Is Lucifer coming back? I have no idea. Is that
yes.
coming back? Oh, wow.
Yes.
Impressive.
No. And I mean, and that's the thing. Joe cut his teeth on those USA shows. And I think USA really kind of cracked the code on how to make fun, TV shows and stuff. Although I have to say, their last crop of newer shows, I'm not as into as I was. I mean, Royal Pains is in its last season. I loved that show. I loved Monk. I loved,
Royal Pains is incredibly amusing. It's such a witty, funny show, and it's similar to Suits, which is also good. And I think you and I have talked about Suits before. But those shows are just the writers' room. I think operates very similarly to Monk, which is they keep those shows really pure, and you're not going to get sideswiped by those shows. The product is there. I love Monk. Yep. I'm a Monk guy through and through, and there's so much amazing writing talent on that show. Kind of mind-boggling, but USA is considered to be one of the best-run companies in town. It's a company where everyone wants to work. So obviously they're doing something right.
There you go. And Joe came from that arena. He was white collar, and then he did Graceland, and then Lucifer came around, and it's like, good for you, Joe. Go. I haven't seen Lucifer, but I have friends who tell me it's pretty good. It got good. It was better than Constantine. All that stuff. Well, you like the show? I love the comic, and the show it's really very different from the comic in the best possible ways, and it's funny. And I mean, I always loved the original concept of Lucifer, the way Gaiman did it, and then Mike Carey, my God, what an amazing comic that it was and everything. And it's different, it's just funny. And it's like, oh, this is really good. And I mean, I wonder how Vertigo purists feel about it, because I really haven't had that conversation with a lot of Lucifer comic fans. But I thought it was hilarious. And it's like, no, this is what it needs to be. And especially Fox was smart putting it with X-Files. And it just worked. It really, the combination worked. And then, God, what a great lead-in. First, the X-Files event of the first those six episodes, and then leading into Gotham, 7 episodes of Gotham. And it's like, good for you guys, go. So Gotham, I got to admit, I'm kind of disappointed in. I don't know how you feel about
Gotham, they seem to be on a track where they can reinvent themselves each year.
True.
And the Batman mythos kind of lends itself to that. I think Bruno Heller, who runs that show, he's from the Mentalist and Rome. That guy's a strong leader. His way in to the material is more important than being pure to DC with the way that show's set up. I mean, that show's set up to be Bruno's show. So that's not a guy I'm going to bet against. You know, I'm not like a Gotham regular watcher. I've checked the show out. There seems to be a level of integrity there that is a notch higher than the CW shows, you know, as far as I can tell.
I do. No, I understand, and I see what you're saying, and don't disagree. I just kind of feel like I don't know. It's not getting to me, and I'm watching it the same way that I watched most of the final season, or I should say the middle seasons of Smallville, where I'll watch the pilot or I'll watch the first episode of the new season. I might catch one or two during the season, and I'll make sure I catch the finale. So I stay in touch with the big story. But as far as the individual stuff, it doesn't get me. And I've got coworkers who don't read comics who love Gotham. And every week are telling me, oh, but this really interesting thing happened. And who is Hugo Strange? And they'll drop names like that. And it's like, oh, that's cool. And I hear really good things about Gotham. And I'm not a purist where it's got to be, you know, directly from the comics. But I don't know. There's just something that, like I said, when Supergirl came on opposite Gotham, and shame on me for, you know, making it this small as far as Gotham. But I'm like, do you want to watch an 11-year-old kid scratch his nose and go, oh, that kind of is the way Batman would scratch his nose? Or do you want to see Supergirl being Supergirl right now within the first 10 minutes of the show? And I'm like, I'm going to vote for Supergirl. And that's kind of what happened with me.
The Supergirl pilot was fantastic. I loved it.
Yep.
I thought they did a great job of it. I have only so many hours of the week to watch a show, so I'm usually like a one show at a time kind of guy. But, I want all these to be successful, but also I am intrigued by the questions about what does this do to the comic book audience? Does this really bring people to comics? And, you know, my medium of choice is comics, and I'm really, really focused on that. You know, and any television stuff or any of the extra stuff, it's just gravy. It's the part-time weekend job, nights and weekends kind of job for me. And what I'm really focused on is putting out the books. Like the Joyners in stores now, and it's going to be every 30 days this summer. So I hope my friends, the listeners out there, will come to the table and watch a family fall apart.
Absolutely, man, and do it monthly. Yes, in 30-day increments. No, honestly, I like I said, man, if I didn't like the book, we wouldn't be talking.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And when the 500-page magnum opus comic is ready to be talked about, you're welcome back, and I'd want to hear what this new project is. And also, I know it's the gravy, I know it's the weekend job, but when you're able to talk about the TV stuff, I want to hear about that as well.
I think I would love to just pop by the second after it's announced, and then we can talk all the nitty-gritty about it and who's involved and stuff. And maybe, by the way, it's television. It could totally fall apart at any moment.
Well, I was wondering.
But you know how that is.
Oh, yeah. No, I realize that as well, and I hope everything does work out because, I'm always happy to hear about a new TV comic book-related project. That's good. So, fingers crossed.
I think you're going to love what we're doing.
Excellent, man.
If it ever sees the light of day, you're going to love it.
Excellent, man. Well, hey, I'm glad that Joyners is back out for people, and hopefully some fresh eyes will hit it. First issue came out this week as we're recording, so it's already on the stands. Make sure you go to your local store and look for it, or get them to order issue 1. And in 30 days, you'll get issue 2, and it's, like you said, 4 issues. So a good summer of a dysfunctional, futuristic family falling apart.
You got it.
Dude, pleasure as always, and come back soon.
Thank you, John, very much.
That's R.J. Ryan. Make sure you check out The Joyners, a great series from Boom Studios, mid-run right now, but an excellent series, worth your attention, and that's why we talked to him. Great talking to Josh, and looking forward to our next conversation very soon. Word Balloon is brought to you today by InStock Trades at InStockTrades.com. Some tremendous deals are happening now at InStock Trades, including, how about 42% off Southern Bastards Volume 3, Homecoming. Great book from Jason Aaron and Jason Latour. 42% off, $8.69. You can get Harley Quinn's Greatest Hits trade paperback. That's 45% off, only $5.49. One of the big hits for DC has been Marguerite Bennett's great series, DC Comics Bombshells. You can get Volume 2, Allies, at a very reduced price, 45% off, just $9.34. Suicide Squad, John Ostrander and Luke McDonald. Wonderful work. Also, Paul Kupperberg is involved. John Snyder III, an artist, on this volume of Suicide Squad. This is the Janus Directive. It is 45% off and only $10.99. From Brian Bendis and Alex Maleev, you can get Scarlet, Book 1. You might have heard Scarlet has now been greenlit and will be a Cinemax TV series. This is Volume 1, 45% off. It's just $10.99. Just a few of the great deals happening at InStockTrades.com. Check it out for yourself. Go to their website. Don't forget, if your orders are $50 or more, you'll receive free shipping from our friends at InStockTrades.com. John Sutter saying thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. Thank you, League of Word Balloon listeners, for your support via Patreon. And San Diego Comic-Con is upon us. I've got a panel at the library on Thursday at 3 o'clock, and then one in the Convention Center Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. The Thursday panel is the early history of comic book films. I'm going to reach back to the silent era and also talk about a few films from the 40s and 50s that are really neat and absolutely are comic book inspired, and I hope you'll enjoy them. Not about the cliffhangers. These are movies that you might not realize are movies that actually are very much about the geek culture as it was in the 1950s in particular. So Trevor Goring is joining me. Trevor is a wonderful storyboard artist and comic book artist in his own right, and you might know him from his work on Thor: The Dark World and the original Fantastic Four movie from the early 2000s, not the Roger Corman one, the pretty good one, with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis. Also Watchmen, Constantine. So it's going to be great to get Trev's perspective on that period of comic book films, but I think you're going to enjoy our discussion, and that will be Thursday at the library at 3 o'clock. Saturday morning at 10:30, it's me and Sal Abenani talking about purchasing original comic book art. And Sal's an expert in this field, and I am going to ask him the questions that we all ask in terms of, is it, out of reach? Can we get original art? Is there a way to collect this at a reasonable price? And, just any of your questions that you might have if you're already a comic art collector. So Sal's a great expert, and I'm really looking forward to this and some of the examples he's going to show. All of that happening at San Diego Comic-Con this week. I hope to see you there. If you are a Word Balloon listener and you're at San Diego Comic-Con, I hope you do come up and say hello. Give me a chance to thank you personally for listening to Word Balloon and supporting the show. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2016.